Last night, my friend Matt Walsh was hacked. His phone was hacked. Apparently, somebody actually duplicated his SIM card. There are only a couple of ways in which that can happen, as far as I understand. One is that somebody actually physically got access to Matt's phone. The other is that somebody actually mimicked Matt to the phone company and had them send a duplicate SIM card. In any case, late last night, people started tweeting out from Matt Walsh's Twitter account a bunch of just vile kind of garbage. It was all shut down pretty quickly. But the important thing to recognize about the radical left trans movement particularly is just how aggressive they are. When I say aggressive, I don't mean like aggressive in their point of view. They are. But I mean aggressive as in they will cross any line in order to go after people they consider to be their enemies. So if you just say a man cannot be a woman and a woman cannot be a man and a man who believes he is a woman is wrong. If you just say that, which is what Matt Walsh does, if you ask people to define the word woman and they can't, people get so angry at you that they will hack your phone, that they will provide security threats sufficient that Matt has to have pretty much 24/7 security on his house, that he's had to cancel speeches due to the level of security threats that have been levied against him. And the tolerant left, they are so tolerant. Because the point here is when the left shows you who they are, when the radical left, not everybody on the left, when the radical left shows you who they are, believe them. So last night, after Matt's phone was hacked, a bunch of the sort of left-wing blue checks on Twitter, the influencers, we might say, they came out of the woodwork in order to celebrate somebody being hacked. Now, there are a lot of people on the left whose perspectives I do not particularly like. There are a lot of people on the left who I strenuously disagree with. Many on the left who I believe their viewpoints actually reflect ideological wrong and evil. But am I in favor of their phones being hacked or their computers being hacked? Of course not. That's absurd. We still live in a civil society in which crime should be treated as crime. But this does not hold true if you violate the scruples of the left. So, for example, Alejandro Caraballo, who is a man who believes that he is a woman and has had some surgeries to prove it, a wise Latina clinical instructor at Harvard Law at the Cyber Law Clinic, which, by the way, Harvard Law should take a very serious look at why somebody should be teaching at the Harvard Law Cyber Law Clinic, who believes that it is a good and useful thing to hack other people's phones. This person also writes for Wired and Slate and tweeted out, Matt Walsh's account has been hacked. Couldn't have happened to a more miserable piece of bleep. Now that seems like somebody who should probably be educating your kids, young adults, over at the Harvard Law Cyber Law Clinic. That seems like a perfectly appropriate response from an academic who writes for Wired and Slate, Alejandro Caraballo. And of course, Alejandro Caraballo is able to get away with this sort of stuff because Alejandro Caraballo is at the top of the intersectional list. This happens to be a wise Latino who believes that he is a Latino, which is like so many checks on the intersectional checkmark list that you can say anything, including celebrating when somebody's phone gets hacked. Or take, for example, Ron Filipkowski. So Ron Filipkowski is a person who is, of course, another radical leftist. He has been seen on the BBC, CNN, MSNBC, CBS, and he tweeted out, Matt Walsh got hacked, and the last hour of his account has been fun. Again, it's all fun and games when it happens to somebody that you disagree with, obviously. Occupy Democrats, which is another left-wing blue-checked account, they tweeted out, breaking. Far-right transphobe Matt Walsh appears to have had his Twitter account hacked as it begins pumping out deeply offensive tweets. And then it quotes a couple of these tweets, which are absurd. Retweet, all caps. Retweet if you think that the hack couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Because this is the way that it works. Again, for my enemies, anything is sufficient, according to the radical left. Just delightful. These are the kind, nice, tolerant people. They're so kind and nice and tolerant that if you disagree with them, they want to see criminal things happen to you. They want to see... You want to know why America is getting more and more polarized? Because there are people in public life on the left who say this sort of stuff, and nobody on the left actually condemns it. I'd like to see somebody on the left say that Alejandro Caraballo is doing something deeply wrong by celebrating a phone hacking, or for Ron Filipkowski, or Occupy Democrats, or, for example, Imani Gandhi, who is a writer for Rewire News Group, who tweeted out in very similar fashion that this was delightful. She tweeted, ugh, this bleep again, clicks on Matt Walsh trending topic. Oh, how delightful. It's delightful when your enemies get hacked. Or, for example, reporters like Stephen Monticelli, who is a writer for the Daily Beast. Stephen Monticelli tweeted out, just putting this out there, but it would really be something if whoever hacked Matt Walsh blog leaked the DMs. And this is always the rule, right? If they leak Donald Trump's tax returns, that's good. If there is a leak of national security secrets under Joe Biden, that's bad. If they leak a bunch of stuff about Donald Trump and his administration from the inside, if it's Alexander Vindman leaking Ukraine docs, that's good. If there's a leak that targets Democrats, that's bad. So I have a perspective on all of this, which is, generally speaking, leaks are bad. And also, generally speaking, phone hackings are bad. And if we live in a society where we respect each other as, members of the same civilization, you shouldn't celebrate when criminal things happen to your political opponents. But the left seems to have, the fact that they say this stuff out loud without any fear of blowback is kind of incredible. Imagine if, for example, a Democratic operative, a person on the left, and say John Lovett from Pod Save America got hacked. His phone got hacked. And I immediately went online. I started talking about how wonderful it was that he'd gotten hacked. First of all, it'd be absurd. It'd be disgusting. But the entire left would correctly call me out and suggest that it's terrible because law breaking is bad. But this is the rule. If you have the correct perspective, then law breaking is fine. Law breaking is just evidence that you are really, really motivated. In fact, the more laws you break, the more motivated you are. This is why the left has a tough time with looting, for example. If it's left-wing looting, they're like, oh, well, they are really committed to the cause. I mean, they may have gone a little far, but we got to understand where they're coming from. Again, we've got to understand where they're coming from routine when it comes to law breaking is absolutely inappropriate. But unfortunately, this is the way the left works. Okay, in just 1 second, we'll get to the biggest news of the day, which is, of course, Fox News paying out nearly $800 million to Dominion Voting Systems. It's the largest media settlement of all time, bar none. It is not close. We'll get to that momentarily. First, you remember when Silicon Valley Bank failed? Well, the reason that it failed is because Silicon Valley Bank had relied apparently on the full faith and credit of the United States government. They bought a lot of government bonds. When they bought all of those government bonds, they assumed that the federal government would not be raising the interest rates radically because inflation wouldn't run out of control. The interest rates did radically increase. The price of their bonds went down. They had all their assets in now devalued bonds, and so they went under. What does this teach you? Well, what it should teach you is that you might want to take some of your money and put it in a precious metal that the government cannot actually manipulate. A true economic crisis is, in fact, going to happen. That's why you should consider diversifying at least some of your assets into precious metals, which is why I own gold from Birch Gold in preparation for uncertain economic times, and you can trust them too. Gold can help you hedge against inflation because its value tends to rise when the cost of living increases. Unlike other assets like paper currency, the supply of gold is limited, which can help maintain its value over time. If you're looking for a smart and safe investment opportunity, get in touch with my friends at Birch Gold. They can help you convert your IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in precious metals. Text BEN to 989898. Get a free info kit on gold. Start investing in your financial future today. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, thousands of happy customers, countless 5-star reviews, Birch Gold is the company I trust to protect my future and yours. Again, text BEN to 989898 today to get started. We'll get to more on this in just 1 second. First, as many of you know, our family recently got a dog. He's a very cute dog. He is a good dog. Is happy. That's a tolerant dog. He is really nice with my kids. Like my son really roughhouses with this dog, and this dog is he's a sweetie. He's a really good dog. Well, we all want Happy to live a long, healthy, and happy life, which is why I'm excited to give him Rough Greens. Naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black, the founder of Rough Greens, is focused on improving the health of every dog in America. The dog food you've been giving your dog is dead food, which doesn't have a lot of nutritional value. That's why I've started supplementing Happy's diet with Rough Greens. Rough Greens is a supplement that contains all the necessary vitamins, minerals, probiotics, omega oils, digestive enzymes, and antioxidants your dog needs. You don't have to go out and buy new dog food. Just sprinkle some Rough Greens on their food every day. Dog owners everywhere are raving about Rough Greens. It supports healthy joints, improves bad breath, boosts energy levels, and a lot more. We are what we eat, and that goes for our dogs, too. Because when we love Happy, we want Happy to be healthy and happy, which is one of the reasons we use Rough Greens. Naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black is so confident Rough Greens will improve your dog's health. He's offering my listeners a free Jumpstart trial bag so your dog can actually try it. That's a free Jumpstart trial bag. Can be at your door in just a few business days. Head on over to freeroughgreens.com/Ben. Let Rough Greens bring your dog's food back to life. That's free, ruffgreens.com/Ben today, or call 833-MY-DOG-33. That's 833-MY-DOG-33. The big news yesterday is that Fox News has now paid out $787 million to avoid a trial. They're being sued by Dominion Voting Systems for $1.6 billion. So they ended up settling for approximately half of what they're actually being sued for, which is actually a really big settlement amount. That's a huge settlement amount. Fox News generally supposedly has, in terms of like cash and cash equivalent assets, about $4.2 billion. So that's actually a hefty chunk of change out of their asset base. The reason that they settled is because they were hoping this would be dismissed on summary judgment. They were hoping that the defamation trial against Dominion is in fact a public company. What I mean by that is that they are not actually like a private actor. The way that it works in defamation law is that if I attack somebody and that person is considered a private person, the standard is lower for defamation. They can sue me for defamation without having to show malice and intent. So the way that it works if you attack a public figure, if I were to attack somebody publicly, if I attack Joe Biden, for example, Joe Biden can't sue me for defamation unless he can prove actual malice, right? Actual malice. Like I knew that it was false. I said it anyway, and I did it because I hate him. And I knew a forethought, like I knew beforehand that it was actually false. So Dominion had to prove that standard. The case that they were making is that Fox News knew full well when it started voting crazy theories from people like Sidney Powell that Dominion voting systems had been hacked and that all of the vote totals had been changed in the aftermath of election 2020, that Fox News and its personalities knew full well that all of that was nonsense, and they aired it anyway. Now, Fox News had some wiggle room in terms of its defense, because the typical answer to that is that you can do the just asking questions kind of thing. Now, the question is, how far does that go? Right? If you're a news channel and you say, listen, I'm just asking questions as to whether your mother is a prostitute. I'm just asking questions about that. Is that defamation? It's kind of borderline, right? Because I know your mom isn't a but if I say on the air, I'm just asking a question as to whether your mom is a and here's Bob over here, and he's going to make the argument that your mom is a I'm really not going to challenge him on it very much. I'm just going to kind of let him say it. Is that defamation or is that not? That's essentially what Dominion Voting Systems was arguing in this particular case. And Fox was making the case that they actually exist inside this window of the just asking questions, investigating all possible theories. So before the actual trial was slated to take place, there's a First Amendment expert at the University of Utah named Ron Nell Anderson-Jones who says it isn't enough to show that Fox made a conscious decision to amplify election denialism generally in its coverage. Dominion has to show that the people who were responsible for creating or platforming the false statements about Dominion had knowledge the statements were false. It's about connecting the dots. And this is why the leaks that came out, the data that came out in the discovery from the text messages of people like Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham suggesting that they knew that a lot of this stuff was crap. That's why Dominion was relying on that. And what Fox was really doing here was preventing its hosts from having to get on the stand, because they would have had to be put on the stand by Dominion, and they would have had to testify whether or not they knew that Dominion's claims were right and that Sidney Powell and Trump's claims were wrong. And that would have been damaging to Fox in two ways. One, it would have damaged Fox because it would have shown, presumably, that these hosts were, quote unquote, lying to their audiences. This is what Dominion was hoping to prove. And two, it would have suggested to the audience of Fox that actually Donald Trump has been lying all along since November about what actually happened with Dominion voting systems and all the like, right? Donald Trump has been out there, I kid you not, actually saying that Fox should have gone to trial and then at trial should have argued that he was right in the first place and Dominion voting systems actually did have its systems hacked, which would have been insane. I mean, totally crazy. Trump had made that case because, of course, Trump's not the one who has to pay the price for any of that. Fox News would have had to pay the price for that. And the judge in this particular case had already suggested that it was perfectly clear, Eric Davis, who was the judge in the Delaware Superior Court, he had already said that it was perfectly clear that the claims against Dominion were totally false, the ones that were being made by Trump's team and by some people on Fox News platforming them. Those claims were false. Right? Davis declared in a pre-trial ruling last month it was crystal clear the allegations were false, but that, of course, was not the end of the case. Politico said libel suits are notoriously difficult to win in the United States, thanks to the New York Times versus Sullivan decision of 1964, in which the Supreme Court ruled that it wasn't enough for a public figure to show a news organization published something false about them to win a defamation case. Instead, accusers have to show actual malice, which means that the outlet either knowingly published a falsehood or published one with reckless disregard for the truth. But of course, there was a lot of kind of juicy stuff in the document. So there were Tucker Carlson's candid characterizations of Stop the Steal attorney-in-chief Sidney Powell. He labeled her a liar, an unguided missile who is dangerous as hell and tantamount to poison. There's a Lou Dobbs producer who in January 2021 calls Rudy Giuliani so full of bleep. Laura Ingraham had suggested that he was such an idiot, and Sean Hannity had labeled him an insane person. Right? All of this sort of stuff came up in the documents. Noah Feldman, who is a left-winger over at Harvard, he says it's hard to get evidence to prove that someone in the media knew something was false. What's unusual in this case is there's a lot of evidence that these people knew that the claims were false. But again, knowing it's false and thinking it's false are not quite the same thing. Because what you could do is you could say, I think it's false, like I'm almost certain it's false, but I still have an obligation to air the other side of the argument, which is the case presumably that Fox would have had to make at the trial. They didn't want it to go to trial because if they get in front of a jury, very likely that the jury hits them with the full penalty. And not only that, it would have been very bad for their host. So instead, what they decided to do was pay out this giant settlement. And again, this is the largest media settlement in American history by a factor of about 5. Alrighty, guys, the rest of the show continues right now. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll be speaking with the head of Preborn, trying to save babies, Dan Steiner. If you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click the link in the description and join us.